Hello, happy Tuesday, and welcome back to Lunch with Lisa. Today, I'm coming to you from my living room. As with half of the, or I guess half of the Eastern Seaboard, we have no power. So we're working off of a generator, and so that you can actually hear me over the generator, which is right outside my office, coming to you from the living room. So thank you for joining us. As you know, I'm the CEO of Nickerson, and we are a full-service PR and marketing firm in Boston and Miami. And one of the things that we did when this first happened was pivot. And we pivoted by offering you a daily webinar. And this came from my friends saying they weren't taking breaks during the day. And I said, well, you need to take a lunch break. And so what I've offered is a lunch break every day for 25 minutes of bite-sized information of something you may not have been thinking about, something you probably should be thinking about that you can take away for the rest of your day. So we're super excited to have the amazing guests we've had. And today we have Lydia Denworth. And Lydia is a science journalist and contributing editor for Scientific American. And her work has appeared in The Atlantic, Newsweek, The New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, Time, Spectrum, and apparently everywhere. And with that, she's also written 3 books: Toxic Truth, How a Scientist and a Doctor Risked Their Careers and Reputations to Sound Alarm Bells About How Lead Was Contaminating Our Environment and Endangering Children, I Can Hear You Whisper, Investigation into Hearing, Sound, Brain Plasticity, and Deaf Culture After She Learned Her Youngest Son Couldn't Hear, and Friendship, The Evolution, Biology, and Extraordinary Power of Life's Fundamental Bond. And when Lydia was first recommended to me, I thought, this is really fascinating, because if there's one thing I've been thinking a lot about the past few weeks is my friendships and how we've been coming together, how we've been helpful to each other, how we can be more helpful to each other. And until we talked, I didn't really understand a lot of the dynamics of how the brain relates to friendship. And so, Lydia, could you tell me, what brought you to friendship from your science writing, than friendship?
Well, it's exactly that. It's that it was surprising to me that there is this science to friendship that we are not familiar with, that it has a biology and an evolutionary story. And my previous book, I Can Hear You Whisper, got me interested in the brain. And that is actually primarily what I cover for Scientific American these days, although I do other things too. And when I heard neuroscientists talking about friendship, it made me sit up and say, what? I mean, it makes perfect sense, because the brain, in fact, controls everything we do. So why shouldn't it also control our friendships and be a part of that story? But it felt like there was a new, there is this new push to take friendship much more seriously on the part of neuroscientists, evolutionary biologists, anthropologists, a whole bunch of people who were not really thinking about friendship. They thought it was kind of squishy and ephemeral before, right? So that was the story I wanted to tell as a serious science journalist. I wanted to dig in and understand why we should take it so seriously and what it has to do with our biology and why we are designed to make friends.
So what is that biology? What should we be aware of that we're not aware of right now?
Well, so 2 big things. One is that in terms of your health and your biology, friendship is as important as diet and exercise. So that means that, if you're going to schedule a run or, time to the gym a couple times a week, you should be making sure that you're also spending time with friends. It's that important. It affects your immune system, your cardiovascular functioning, your stress responses, your mental health, cognitive health, and even how long you live. So people who are more socially connected live longer.
So if I don't touch base with my friends, and I'm thinking about this in terms of a webinar we did last week where Dr. Welter said you should put yourself on your to-do list to make sure that you're as big a priority. It sounds like we should make sure that our friends are on that priority list. And what is like when you say it's like fitness, but really, do you have it like a quantitative, what's that benefit or that loss if we aren't making that a priority?
You're gonna die earlier, Lisa. Let me just tell you straight out.
Let me sit it here. Check in with your friends, or you're going to die.
Well, the thing that best predicts how healthy you will be at 80 is your satisfaction with your relationships at 50.
Wow.
And so and 50 is when a lot of people, 40, 50, a lot of people are really busy, right?
Yeah.
They're focused on professions, they're focused on raising their families, and that's all good. Those are important things. But the point is, friendship is a lifelong endeavor, and you need to be paying attention to it all the way through your life. And, sometimes you're going to have more time than others to devote to it, but it takes time. Friendship actually takes time. It takes time to make friends, and it takes time to be a friend. And we can't short circuit that.
Does your significant other count in that friendship as you reference it?
So here's a really fascinating thing. When they asked a bunch of people in Jacksonville, Florida, thousands of people in a study, is your significant other your best friend? Something like 60% said yes. But when they asked the same people that question in Mexico City, almost no one said yes.
Wow, so it's cultural.
So we don't think that this is a statement about this, the state of marriage in Mexico. We think that it's a sign of how cultural it is that that some of us, especially in the West, want to think of our spouse or our significant other as a best friend. Really, what's going on there is that to use the word friend is qualitative. It's to say that there's value added, because I can tell you I have a husband, but that doesn't tell you anything about our relationship. I'm sure you're going to hope that it is a lovely relationship, and it is. But if I tell you that my husband is my best friend, now I'm telling you something really positive, right? And that is what friendship is all about. It is about having really strong quality bonds, and quality matters most. Quality matters more than quantity. Quantity is important, but quality is what matters. And if you have one really good friend close to you, then you are so much better off than if you have none.
And so it's okay. It's not about quantity of friends, then it's about the quality of the friendships that you have.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things that this science of friendship has done that's really fascinating to me is that one reason that they weren't studying it actually is because it's not so easy to define or to measure. But now we've sort of arrived at a way of doing that. And what's happened is that scientists have kind of said, okay, there are 3 minimum requirements for friendship. One is that the relationship is generally long lasting. So it's somebody who's a stable, reliable presence in your life. 2, it's positive. So it makes you feel good and you make them feel good. And then 3, it's cooperative. So it's reciprocal. There's back and forth. And that means that if those are the minimum definitions and you need all of those pieces for something to be a friendship, then you need to think about it. It should inform how you go about being a good friend. So be reliable, be positive, be helpful, right? And those are the things now in this time of coronavirus that I think we can really be thinking about. However you're connecting with your friends, maybe you're doing it like this, right? With Zoom or something. Did you say something nice to somebody today? Were you positive? Were you helpful, right? It's a great way to frame how you connect.
Well, I think it's also easy right now to be busy, right? You've got work, you've got your kids home, you've got maybe a spouse that needs a different type of attention. And and it goes back to friendship. This is like, could be like a whole nother webinar by itself. Being at home all day, every day.
Yes.
And so remembering that the people outside of your sphere might need a little touch base also, right? Like just a little connection.
Oh, yeah. In fact, one of the things I think is super interesting about what's happening right now is that people are connecting to friends that they have not seen in a really long time. I'm hearing a lot about that. And that I think what it is that this time of this pandemic, when we've all been sort of locked up in our houses, we can no longer take friendship for granted and our relationships for granted. And so it's amplifying our sense of connection with the people that have mattered to us, that matter to us now and have mattered to us in the past. And people are starting to reach out in a way that they haven't before to someone that they, haven't seen in a few years but what matters the most is that you sort of are maintaining, let's call it 4. Most of us have an average of 4 people in our inner circle, and that can be family, but it's also friends. Put time into those, then that next group is like 10 to 15 people that they're the people, the way I usually say is, who are the first 10 people you would invite to your birthday party, right?
Right.
That's usually that next circle out.
Right.
Have you called them? Have you checked in? Have you sent a text? Have you emailed? Have you, especially people who live alone,
Right.
are you making sure that, so I have 3 kids and a husband and some other people staying with us because we're in the country. So we have, if anything, too much togetherness here in this house, right now. So it might be easy to say, I just need time alone, but I'm also making a point of checking in with people that I know are alone.
Right. Sure. So, you just answered the question that someone asked about distance and relationship and time. And I think that, I have a lot of friends that maybe work-related friends, and we talk a lot about work, whereas I have friends who are not work-related friends, and they don't want to talk about work. They don't care about my work. They don't hear about my work. But you and I were introduced through Terry Trespicio, who's on today. Hi, Terry. And Terry and I go back to college, and I feel like we can talk, like lately we've been talking a lot about work because we really connect about what we're both doing right now. And then sometimes we can have some time off because we're busy doing other things, and then we come back to it. So how does that type of friendship, you've got the friends you call to maybe talk about your relationship, you've got the friends you call to talk about your children, right? I feel like I've got like pockets of different types of friends that I have different types of conversations with, or that I talk to more frequently or less frequently. Again, how does that all balance into this?
So, I thought this was super interesting. There's a psychologist at Northwestern University who actually dubbed that emotion ships. So that the idea being that each friendship sort of serves a certain set of emotions that we have, or a piece of our lives. So if you take, and I know that this is something that you think about, if you take the 5 or 6 people closest to you and you look at who they are, that will tell you something about who you are. And they might each hit, a different part of who you are. And so I have a lot of friends who are sort of middle-aged women with kids and creative jobs. And it makes perfect sense, right? I am close to a lot of, we have a lot to talk about, but that's not all of who my friends are, right? So I have other kinds of friends that fit into other buckets, and where maybe emotionally we have more in common. And so what's really important, though, is that there is this continual give and take in whatever friendship it is, and that you understand, what you get out of that relationship, and that you give as much as you get. And sometimes we lose track of that. I think we get, it's easy to focus on, what have you done for me lately, but without always recognizing what I need to do for you.
Sure. Going back to the 5 friends, one of my favorite sayings is, show me your 5 best friends and I'll show you your future. And I use that a lot with my children too, to think about that as they're choosing their friends. But I think about that in my daily also, that, there's a certain energy I get from certain people, and I want to be around that. One of the things that you said that actually, maybe a little bit nervous for people, is that you talked about the importance of friendships in that 40 to 50-year-old range. That's a very heavy divorce range, right? And so I think about how many people are going through that, and the negativity of not only this person who's your partner, that it has effects on your brain, but I think that that's where a lot of times that can be a really big friend switch also, where suddenly friends are choosing sides. You might be making new friends. Now you've got new single friends. You're losing your married friends. And this isn't something we talked about before, but I just sort of picked up on it. If you could tell us a little bit more about the risks of challenging relationships on our health. And then you even mentioned to me that you might have a friend where there's good and bad, and the good outweighs the bad. We all have those friends. And those are just as damaging. So now tell us how we're going to stay alive, because I think there are a lot of people that fall in these buckets, right?
So let me start there just to make sure that people are clear. So we're talking about ambivalent relationships. So when I say that the quality of friendships, it matters most, I'm really talking about for your health. So all those things I listed before, and your, how healthy you're going to be, your longevity, all of that, positive relationships feed that, and negative relationships are bad for your health. And now there's research on ambivalent relationships where there's some good and there's some bad, right?
Right.
And we all, as you say, we all have those. In fact, according to one study, that's about half, 40 to 50% of our relationships we define that way. Now, they do that very generously. So any negative, would make it an ambivalent relationship. And I mean, we're human. With whom do you not have any negative? But it's bad for your blood pressure. It's bad for your immune system. It's bad for your cells age more rapidly if you're in a negative relationship, friendship. So what that means is that it's really critical that you are working and thinking about keeping your relationships positive, your friendships positive.
So
and
especially now,
it takes effort, it takes work, and it takes attention, and you have to be motivated to do it. And so those things are hard. Now, with the divorce question, basically what you're getting at is transitions. And so all through life, transitions are moments of change with friendship. They often are. So when we move, when we get married, when we have a baby, when we get divorced, we lose a spouse, all kinds of things. Whenever there's a transition, even if it's a happy transition, there's often some change or some shifting in friendships. And sometimes that's going to be unavoidable. But what I think is really important is that those moments do tend to show you who your good friends truly are. Because somebody who's sensitive enough to understand that when you're going through a divorce, you're going to need them in a different way, or that they should be. So if a couple has split, I mean, the classic problem is a couple splits and then they're friends with both people, right? Or how does that work? Well, I mean, people have to navigate that, and sometimes they have to make choices. But what I think is the most important aspect here is just that we're really intentional about how we approach friendship, how we think about it, that we understand how critical it is for us. Friendship is really about helping you get through the stresses of day-to-day life, right? It's designed to be protective, and you get the rewards and the fun of it so that you'll want to keep coming back for more. And your brain says, "Ooh, that was fun. I had such a good night at girls' night out," or whatever it is you like to do. And then, later when you need those women or those friends, they're there, right? And it goes all the way back. So, one piece of the subtitle of my book is Evolution, the Evolution of Friendship. It turns out that for baboons and rhesus macaques and a whole bunch of other species, there's been a survival of the friendliest at work. There are evolutionary advantages.
Survival of the friendliest.
Survival of the friendliest. There are evolutionary advantages to being good at building strong, positive bonds. And in a bunch of studies in Africa, the baboons with the strongest positive bonds in the troop, they lived longer and they had more and healthier babies. And in evolutionary terms, you cannot do better than that. That's what we're all after. It's what we're after too, right? We were trying to raise up our kids and get them through to the next generation and all of that. And so that tells us, we thought for a long time that friendship was just cultural, that it was this byproduct of language and of people living in groups. But now we understand that there's this, it's deeper than that. It's more of the infrastructure of who we are as humans, which is why we can't afford not to prioritize it.
Sure. So, I feel like a common theme to know that we can all be thinking about, what do we want our life to be, post sheltering in place, right?
Yeah.
And a good question has been, what are you not missing? What do you not want in your life going forward? And I think we can look at our friends a little bit the same way. Two of the questions that we have is, when it goes negative, or when you've determined that you've outgrown a relationship, which you've said is not always bad, what is a way to do it so that it's not hurtful? And what's a way to address it so that, again, you're not bringing pain to yourself at the same time?
I don't know if it's possible to avoid all hurt and pain in that, but and the way I see it, you have three choices. If you have a relationship, a friendship that is not feeding you or sustaining you anymore. So one is to try to do the work of having a conversation the way you might with your significant other, right? And we don't always do that with friendship. I mean, one of the things about friends is that it's also possible just to sort of ghost them, right? But
Right.
that's the coward's way. That's lazy. And so I think you should do them the honor of having the conversation, hard though that might be, trying to make it better. Also looking at your side of it. Have you, are you blameless in this relationship, or is it, and then alternatively, if you cannot make it better, of course you can say, that I'm not spending time with this person anymore. There's almost no way for that to be not painful, but it might be that is what serves you best. And then the third option is probably more what happens most often, is that if you think of those concentric circles of relationships we have, maybe you shuffle someone to an outer ring of the circle.
Right.
Just don't spend as much time with them. And, I know that can be hard. Everybody wants that magic bullet. Like, how do I do this in a way that doesn't hurt anyone? Well, guess what?
Right.
Human relationships are messy and they can be painful. But what is important to know here is that it's important for your health to have strong, positive relationships around you. And so whatever you have to do to make that happen, I think is worth doing.
Sure. This 25 minutes goes very quickly. We are with 4 minutes to go. I just like to check my poll. My daily poll tells me how people are managing working from home. And today we're at 33% are loving working from home. So that's a drop from yesterday and the day before. We've been closer to the 44 to 50% range. I always say sometimes it's our audience. I think sometimes it's the day. On a day where a lot of people are without power, it might be that you're looking forward to getting out. I think there's a lot of people without power in the East Coast. For 46%, it's working well for now. And 23% are saying, I can't wait to get back to the office. So, it'll be interesting because I think that there are also work friends that people have that they're probably missing. One of the big takeaways, and again, we only have a few minutes left. I'm just trying to look at, if anybody has any other questions, please put them out there. But I want to go to something that I had not thought of that you said, which is the good and the bad, the seesaw relationship, right? I think some people are addicted to those relationships that, it's good, then it's bad. It's good and it's bad. And the good outweighs the bad. Again, what is the effect on you when you sort of tolerate and play that game?
Well, so I'll just go down the list again. So the things that negative relationships have been, or even ambivalent relationships have been shown to affect, are your blood pressure, your immune system. So that's your susceptibility to inflammation, viruses, things like that. Your stress responses. So your cognitive health, your mental health, and your rate of aging. So how, it's pretty big stuff. It's serious, and it's, and I think this is the piece that people haven't understood about friendship before. And it's part of why we kind of took it for granted, the good parts, and then maybe put up with some of the bad parts. What I hope happens as a result of this sheltering in place is that we remember when this is done, what we've missed. And I think that this has sort of thrown in sharp relief how important our friendships are to us, and that we shouldn't go back to our old ways when we're done.
Yeah. And that we should add those really good friends to the list. And I thought about this when we were preparing yesterday for today's call. I started thinking about some of the people that I probably should be reaching out to and checking in with. But then I realized that I have some friends who are just really good about checking right back in with me. And it's been really interesting the past few weeks how I'm talking more to some people, less to others. I think some have more going on. I don't have little kids at home, so I'm not consumed by that. Some people are. But even those people who are consumed and maybe you're not hearing from, they just need a little check. And even if it's a text, just to say,
be short. Yeah, it's not about a long conversation. It's about regular check-in, making friends part of your routine. But the last thing I want to say is that this isn't something you don't have to add this to your to-do list. I mean, yes, it sounds that way, but I feel like this is permission to hang out with your friends and to understand that time spent with friends is time well spent.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because we have 1 more minute. And we talked about that, particularly with, I'm going to say men, and I'm stereotyping, but who might have something they regularly do. They regularly go to golf. They regularly do fantasy football, right?
Mhm.
You know, Bob always is playing in a gig somewhere, and he was really missing that this weekend. And
Yeah.
so, you know, connecting now, even though it's virtual and it's not the same, taking that time that you would normally take and
Mhm.
still do it. Just because it's Saturday and you can't golf, you don't have to clean the house. I mean, God bless the stuff that we've gotten out of storage, right? But you got to take the time to, right? Playing your guitar or still connecting with your friends in some sort of meaningful way, and you'll feel better about yourself too.
Absolutely. I have a male friend who's been playing poker with his friends from, you know, that he would normally be playing poker with every week. And
Right.
I think it's been great. It's not exactly the same, but it's better than nothing.
Right. Well, Lydia, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank everybody who's come to listen. And I always appreciate when you ask questions and engage with us. And, you know, I hope you're all staying well and staying healthy. And now you've got another way to stay even more healthy. Make sure you're checking in with your friends today. Talk to you soon. See you
All right.
tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.